And I knew if you could survive that scene, you were the right guy for Gilligan's Island.
Gilligan's Island looked like a lighthearted sitcom about castaways stuck after a 3-hour tour gone wrong. But the show's story is packed with strange twists.
Bob Denver. By that time, I had cast him because he was clearly terrific. He was only the second person I looked at.
Shocking cast secrets and odd moments that most fans have never heard of. Some might even be stranger than fiction. Here are 13 weird facts about Gilligan's Island that will totally surprise you. 13. The socialite who sank the show. Imagine being told your show is coming back for another season, so you buy a new house, plan your future, and start celebrating, only to find out from a magazine that you've just been fired. That's exactly what happened to the cast of Gilligan's Island. At the end of the 3rd season, the show was doing well. Sure, it wasn't breaking records, but fans loved it, and CBS had quietly told the team to expect a 4th season. Everyone was ready to stay on the island for at least another year. Then, without warning, the show was canceled. So what happened? The real reason is one of the strangest in TV history. It had nothing to do with ratings or money, but apparently, it had everything to do with one woman's favorite show. At that time, CBS president William Paley ran the network. His wife, Babe Paley, was a powerful New York socialite. She was famous for her style and taste, and she absolutely loved another CBS show called Gunsmoke, an old Western drama. Gunsmoke had been on the air for years, but its ratings were starting to slip. CBS planned to cancel it to make room for a new lineup that included another season of Gilligan's Island. When Babe Paley heard Gunsmoke was on the chopping block, she wasn't happy. In fact, she told her husband she would not forgive him if he let her favorite show get canceled. That conversation changed everything. Within days, Gunsmoke was suddenly renewed and moved to the exact time slot CBS had promised Gilligan's Island. That meant there was no room left on the schedule. And just like that, Gilligan's Island was gone. The cast found out the same way the public did, from trade magazines and newspapers. Some of them had already made plans to stay in Los Angeles for the next season. Others were shocked that the network didn't even bother to call. Bob Denver, who played Gilligan, later said it was one of the most ridiculous cancellations he'd ever seen. What's even crazier is that Gilligan's Island went on to make CBS hundreds of millions of dollars through reruns. The show they canceled in a hurry ended up becoming one of the most popular sitcoms in TV history. But this was only the start of the drama. Because while fans dreamed of living on the island, one cast member couldn't wait to escape it. 12. The star who hated being on the island. You'd think being part of one of the most famous TV comedies of the 1960s would be a dream come true. But for one star of Gilligan's Island, it was more like being stuck on a real island she couldn't escape. That star was Tina Louise, the actress who played Ginger Grant, the glamorous movie star. On screen, Ginger was charming, confident, and loved attention. Off-screen, however, Tina wasn't happy at all. She thought the show would be a smart, witty comedy like The Honeymooners. But when Gilligan's Island finally aired in 1964, she realized it was something very different, full of slapstick humor, silly, and pretty much over the top. Tina felt that her character was too shallow and didn't get enough serious scenes. She wanted Ginger to be more than just the alluring movie star. In fact, she once said in an interview that she didn't want to be remembered only for Gilligan's Island. The fame from the show actually hurt her acting career later, because people only saw her as Ginger and nothing else. Her relationship with the rest of the cast was also tense at times. Some co-stars, like Dawn Wells, Mary Ann, and Bob Denver, Gilligan, were close friends on and off set, but Tina often kept to herself. Some reports even said she didn't like being called Ginger when the cameras stopped rolling. When the show ended in 1967, most of the cast came back for reunion movies and cartoons, but not Tina Louise. She turned them all down, and that's why the character of Ginger was played by different actresses in later versions. She simply wanted to move on. Interestingly, over the years, Tina softened a little about her time on the island. In later interviews, she said she was proud of how much joy the show brought to fans around the world. Still, she admitted that being stuck as Ginger for decades was frustrating for an actress who wanted to do more serious work. 11. When reality mirrored the 3-hour tour. It was supposed to be a simple story. A group of tourists sets out on a 3-hour tour, only to end up stranded on a deserted island. But something strange happened during the filming of Gilligan's Island, and reality started to look a little too much like the show's plot. The show's opening theme song talks about the SS Minnow getting caught in a storm and wrecked. What most people don't know is that there really was a boat called the SS Minnow used in the filming. In fact, there were actually a few of them. One of the boats was used for wide ocean shots in Hawaii, where the first episode was filmed. Another was used for scenes closer to shore. But the whole thing got eerie when one of those real SS Minnows did end up stranded after a storm, just like in the show. During filming in Hawaii, strong waves damaged the boat, and it had to be rescued. Later, another SS Minnow used for promotional work sank during a storm near Vancouver, Canada. It's almost as if the show's 3-hour tour curse jumped off the screen and into real life. Even the filming itself sometimes felt like survival. The cast and crew shot the pilot in Oahu under intense sun and heavy humidity. The heat was so bad that Bob Denver, Gilligan, and Alan Hale Jr., the skipper, often had to take breaks to cool off. Between the wild weather, real-life boat trouble, and endless tropical challenges, it started to feel like the island had a mind of its own. 10. The hidden injury on Paradise. Alan Hale Jr., who played the lovable skipper on Gilligan's Island, was known for his warmth, humor, and professionalism. But few fans know just how far his dedication went. According to show creator Sherwood Schwartz in his book Inside Gilligan's Island, Hale once suffered a serious onset injury that he kept completely secret from the crew, all because he didn't want to slow down production. During the filming of a first-season episode, Hale had to perform a stunt that involved falling out of a tree. Somewhere in the process, he missed the crash pad and landed hard on his wrist. The impact broke it. Instead of telling anyone, Hale simply carried on as if nothing had happened. Schwartz later described him as one of those "the show must go on" actors who kept performing, no matter the pain. Weeks later, at the Season 1 wrap party, Schwartz finally noticed that Hale's wrist looked swollen and asked him what had happened. Hale calmly replied, "Oh, I broke it a few weeks ago." The answer stunned everyone. He had continued filming all that time with a broken arm. When Schwartz asked how he managed it, Hale just smiled and said, "It wasn't easy." He was immediately taken to a doctor, where he was fitted with a cast that went up to his elbow. Thankfully, he made a full recovery. That wasn't the only time Hale got hurt while filming. In the episode Angel on the Island, aired December 12, 1964, there's a moment where Gilligan carries a bamboo ladder and accidentally bumps into the skipper. To make the gag look real, the ladder's rungs were pre-cut to break away on impact. Unfortunately, some of the cuts were angled, and when the ladder snapped, one of the splintered pieces struck Hale's ear. The sharp edge cut him badly enough that he had to wear a bandage, which can be spotted in some production photos and in a video essay by Rick Nines. 9. The cast made millions for CBS but were left penniless. When Gilligan's Island first aired in 1964, it was just another fun TV comedy. No one imagined it would one day become one of the most replayed shows in television history. But while reruns made millions for the network, the cast who brought the island to life earned almost nothing from its massive success. Back then, TV contracts were very different. from what actors get today. The stars of Gilligan's Island were paid only for the original run of the show. That is the 3 seasons, from 1964 to 1967. Once filming ended, their paychecks stopped. They didn't own any part of the show, and there were no agreements for future earnings. That meant when Gilligan's Island went into syndication, playing again and again on local channels, the actors didn't receive a cent. Bob Denver, who played Gilligan, later said that none of them realized how big the show would become. In the 70s and 80s, reruns exploded in popularity, especially with younger viewers who hadn't seen the original broadcast. Gilligan's Island aired almost everywhere. After school, on weekends, even overseas. It became a cultural icon. But while the studio made a fortune, the cast could only watch. Tina Louise, Ginger, had already moved on by then, but others like Dawn Wells, Mary Ann, and Russell Johnson, the professor, still met fans at conventions who assumed they were rich from reruns. In truth, they made more money from fan events and public appearances than from the show itself. Wells once said it was strange meeting fans who knew every line of the show while she still lived on a modest income. The show's creator, Sherwood Schwartz, was one of the few people who did profit from syndication. He kept ownership rights and earned royalties for decades. The cast didn't blame him personally because those were just the standard contracts of the time, but it was still bittersweet. And if you think this is crazy, as the weirdness gets, then the next fact will absolutely shock you. 8. The alternate, dark version that almost was. It's hard to imagine Gilligan's Island as anything other than a bright, silly comedy about castaways. But believe it or not, the show almost had a much darker tone when it was first created. The early idea wasn't filled with goofy accidents or coconut radios, but was more like a survival drama. Before Gilligan's Island became the lighthearted classic everyone knows, creator Sherwood Schwartz had written a very different version of the pilot script. In that early draft, the story focused on how different types of people would react when trapped together after a shipwreck. Instead of slapstick humor, it was meant to explore tension, fear, and human behavior in isolation. Think of it as a mix between Lost and The Twilight Zone, not a family comedy. Schwartz wanted to use the show to comment on society, about how the rich and poor, smart and clueless would have to rely on each other to survive. It was supposed to be thought-provoking, but when he pitched it to CBS, the executives weren't convinced. They liked the idea of people stranded on an island but didn't want a serious show. They wanted something funny, something families could watch together. So Schwartz rewrote it completely. The darker moments were replaced with silly misunderstandings and big laughs. The skipper became a lovable leader instead of a gruff, serious sailor. Gilligan turned into the bumbling but kind-hearted fool everyone loved. The show's theme song was rewritten too, going from a dramatic introduction to a cheerful tune that told the whole story in under a minute. Even after the change, a few traces of the original idea still slipped through. In early episodes, there were moments where the castaways really thought they might never be rescued. The tone was a little more serious at times, especially when storms hit or when they faced danger. But as the show found its rhythm, the darker edges disappeared completely. Imagine if that first version had made it to air. It might never have become the cultural hit we know today. Thankfully, Sherwood Schwartz listened to his instincts and turned what could have been a grim story of survival into one of the most cheerful, unforgettable comedies ever made. 7. The Lagoon Behind the Illusion. Every fan of Gilligan's Island remembers that peaceful blue lagoon where the castaways fished, built rafts, and dreamed of escape. It looked like paradise on TV, with swaying palm trees, calm water, and sunshine. But behind the illusion, that lagoon was far from tropical bliss. It was a smelly, man-made mess sitting in the middle of Hollywood. When the show began filming, the producers needed a place that looked like a remote island but was close enough to the studio. So they built the famous lagoon right on the CBS lot in Studio City, California. It was surrounded by palm trees trucked in from other parts of Los Angeles and filled with water from the city's supply. From the camera's point of view, it looked like the ocean stretched for miles. But just beyond the set were busy streets and tall buildings. At first, the lagoon worked perfectly. The cast could film all their island scenes without leaving California. But as time went on, the magic started to fade. Because the water didn't move or drain properly, it quickly became dirty. Algae grew thick, bugs swarmed around, and the smell got so bad that some cast members joked it was the real villain of the show. Dawn Wells, who played Mary Ann, later said that filming in that lagoon was one of the hardest parts of the job. The water was warm and murky, and if anyone fell in, they had to shower right away. During hot days, it was even worse. The smell hung in the air while cameras rolled, and the actors had to pretend everything was lovely and tropical. Sometimes, they even used dry ice to make fog for certain scenes, which only made the water more unpleasant. Yet despite all this, the lagoon looked stunning on TV. The camera crews were experts at framing it just right, using angles and lighting to hide everything outside the set. When Gilligan's Island ended, the lagoon sat unused for years until CBS finally drained it and built a parking lot over the spot. Today, there's no trace of the island left. 6. A subtle Cold War story in disguise. At first glance, Gilligan's Island looks like the lightest show ever made. But hidden beneath the laughter, some fans and even a few scholars believe the show reflected America's fears and hopes during the Cold War. When the show debuted in 1964, the world was deep in Cold War tension. The United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a fierce race for power. Nuclear weapons, space exploration, and the fight for global influence were daily headlines. In that anxious atmosphere, Gilligan's Island became an escape, but also, perhaps, a reflection of how people wished the world could be. Think about it. 7 very different Americans are trapped together in isolation. You have a millionaire and his wife, a movie star, a farm girl, a professor, a sailor, and a goofy everyman. They come from different backgrounds, classes, and lifestyles, yet they have to cooperate to survive. Some fans have argued that this was a subtle message about unity and how Americans from all walks of life could work together, even when cut off from the rest of the world. Others have noticed that the island itself felt like a metaphor for the world at the time. The castaways were isolated, unable to leave, and always preparing for possible threats, just like people living under the shadow of nuclear tension. In some episodes, foreign spies or mysterious invaders appeared on the island, echoing the paranoia of the era. These storylines may seem silly now, but they mirrored the way Americans viewed the world then, uncertain, but hopeful that teamwork and cleverness could win. 5. Theme song controversy. Who's in, who's the rest? Almost everyone can hum the Gilligan's Island theme song. It's one of the catchiest tunes in TV history. But what most people don't know is that this cheerful little song caused a big argument among the cast and almost tore the show apart. When Gilligan's Island first aired in 1964, the theme song introduced each character. A skipper, a millionaire, his wife, a movie star. And then it ended with the line, "and the rest." Sounds harmless, right? Well, not if you were the rest. That tiny phrase completely erased 2 main cast members, Russell Johnson, who played the smart and calm professor, and Dawn Wells, who played the sweet and hardworking Mary Ann. Both were central to the story, yet they didn't even get named in the theme song. Imagine working hard on a hit TV show, only to be introduced like an afterthought. It stung. Russell and Dawn were deeply hurt, but there wasn't much they could do at first. The show's producers claimed There wasn't enough time in the song to include everyone. But Bob Denver, who played Gilligan, thought that excuse was ridiculous. He knew how important his co-stars were to the show. Without them, the island didn't work. So Bob took a stand. When the second season began production, he confronted the studio and asked them to change the theme song, but they refused, stating that it would be quite expensive to change the theme song as well as the opening credits. But they finally had to change their mind when Bob threatened to force them to put his name at the end of the credits. And he could have followed through because his contract could allow for such a demand. And so, CBS caved, and the lyrics were changed to add the now famous line, "The Professor and Mary Ann." That one small change meant everything. The cast finally felt seen, and the show's theme became complete. Next time you sing along, remember, the line, "The Professor and Mary Ann" is there because Gilligan fought for it. 4. One cast member escaped the contract trap. When Gilligan's Island ended in 1967, most of the cast thought their tropical troubles were over. But the real storm hit after the cameras stopped rolling. The show became a huge hit in reruns, earning CBS and the producers millions of dollars for decades. Unfortunately, the cast who brought the island to life didn't see a single cent. Back in the 1960s, actors often signed contracts that only paid them during the original broadcast. There were no royalties, no streaming bonuses, and no syndication checks. Once the show ended, so did the pay. Bob Denver, Alan Hale Jr., and the others watched their faces appear on TV every day, while their bank accounts stayed empty. But there was one clever exception: Dawn Wells, the actress who played Mary Ann. Wells's husband at the time, Larry Rosen, worked as a talent agent. He spotted a strange detail in her contract. She would only get residual payments for the first 5 reruns of each episode. After that, nothing. Rosen knew the show might catch on, so he pushed for a small but vital change before she signed. He negotiated an amendment that extended her residuals beyond the original limit. The producers agreed, thinking the show wouldn't last long anyway. They were wrong. Gilligan's Island exploded in popularity after it was canceled, becoming one of the most rerun shows in history. Thanks to that tiny clause, Dawn Wells received ongoing payments while her co-stars got nothing. It wasn't millions, but it gave her steady income for years, which was something none of the others had. Wells never bragged about it, though. She stayed humble and often used her fame to support fans and charities. While others struggled financially, she continued to attend conventions, always smiling, always thankful for the role that defined her career. 3. Ginger's reunion absence. For years, fans dreamed of seeing the Gilligan's Island cast reunited. The skipper, the professor, Mary Ann, Gilligan, and of course, the glamorous Ginger Grant. But every time a reunion special or TV movie came around, one name was always missing: Tina Louise. The actress who played Ginger wanted nothing more to do with the show that made her famous. When Gilligan's Island first aired in 1964, Tina Louise expected it to be her big Hollywood breakthrough. She had already built a solid career as a model and Broadway actress. She thought playing a movie star stranded on an island would highlight her beauty and her acting talent. Instead, she felt trapped in a silly sitcom full of slapstick jokes. From her point of view, the show made her character one-dimensional and not a real woman with depth. Tina grew unhappy early on. She kept her distance from the other cast members, rarely joined in behind-the-scenes jokes, and avoided interviews about the show. When the series ended, she walked away and never looked back. So when CBS produced reunion specials like Rescue from Gilligan's Island, 1978, and The Castaways on Gilligan's Island, 1979, Tina refused to return. Producers tried to convince her, but she declined every offer. They had to recast Ginger with other actresses like Judith Baldwin and Constance Forsland, but fans instantly noticed the difference. The replacements looked the part, but they couldn't capture Tina's spark. For many viewers, Ginger just wasn't Ginger without Tina Louise. Over the years, Tina explained that she wanted to focus on serious acting and didn't want to be forever remembered as the movie star on the island. Ironically, that's exactly what happened. No matter what roles she took later, the world still saw her as Ginger Grant. While some fans viewed her refusal as prideful, others understood her struggle. Hollywood typecasting was brutal, especially for women in the 1960s. Tina wanted control over her image, and that took courage. 2. The professor's real-life hero passed. On Gilligan's Island, the professor was the calm, brilliant problem solver. The man who could turn coconuts into radios and palm leaves into science experiments. But what most fans don't know is that the actor who played him, Russell Johnson, was a real-life hero long before he ever stepped foot on that fake island. Before becoming an actor, Russell Johnson served in the U.S. Army Air Forces during World War II. He wasn't just behind a desk either, but was a bomber pilot flying dangerous missions in the Pacific. In March 1945, tragedy struck. His plane was shot down by enemy fire near the Philippines. Johnson was badly injured when he crash-landed, breaking both his ankles and receiving other wounds. Several of his crewmates didn't survive. For his bravery and service, he was awarded the Purple Heart and other military honors. After the war, while recovering, Johnson used the GI Bill to study acting, a choice that changed his life forever. That same discipline and calmness that helped him survive war later became the essence of the professor. On set, Johnson was known for his focus and professionalism. He always came prepared, often helping rewrite his lines to make the scientific explanations sound more believable. His co-stars said he could memorize complex dialogue with ease and rarely made mistakes. They nicknamed him One-Take Russ because he usually got his scenes right on the first try. Despite his intelligence and charm, Johnson never let fame get to his head. He often joked about how fans would ask him why the professor could build anything except a boat. He took it with good humor, saying, "If I ever built a boat, the show would have been over." Off-screen, he lived a quiet life, raising a family and often visiting fans at conventions. Many were surprised to learn they were shaking hands with a decorated war veteran. 1. The half-mast flag opening reveal. For years, fans of Gilligan's Island have watched the opening credits without realizing a hidden detail was right in front of them. It's a small thing, but once you notice it, you can't unsee it. The American flag on the harbor where the SS Minnow set sail flying at half-mast. That simple image wasn't an accident, and it carries a surprising piece of American history. The pilot episode of Gilligan's Island was filmed in late November 1963. The final day of filming was November 22, 1963, which was the same day one of the darkest moments in U.S. history occurred, the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. At the time, the whole nation was in mourning. Flags across the country were lowered to half-mast to honor the late president, and the small marina where the crew filmed the opening sequence was no exception. So when the Gilligan's Island team filmed those cheerful opening shots of the boat leaving the dock for its 3-hour tour, the flag in the background naturally appeared at half-mast. The show's creator, Sherwood Schwartz, later explained that they didn't stage it that way, and it was simply how things were during that sad moment in history. But once the footage was edited into the opening credits, the image stayed. It's quite the haunting contrast. Because the theme song is upbeat and fun, promising silly adventures and slapstick humor, yet behind it is a symbol of grief from one of America's most painful weeks. Most viewers in the 1960s probably noticed it subconsciously, but very few knew why it was there. Over time, as the show became a timeless classic. That moment turned into an unintentional tribute frozen in TV history. Later seasons filmed entirely new intros, but that original shot of the flag remains one of the most meaningful Easter eggs in the show's history. It connects a lighthearted comedy about 7 castaways to a real moment of national sadness, showing how entertainment and reality can overlap in unexpected ways. So, next time you watch Gilligan's Island and hear that famous theme song begin, look closely at the dock and you'll notice that half-mast. So, which of these weird Gilligan's Island facts surprised you the most? And if you could change one thing about the show, what would it be? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. If you enjoyed this video, click on the next video on your screen.